Tundi had always prided himself on being a man of tradition, someone whose life was governed by the values instilled in him by his family and his community. He was the firstborn son of a well-respected family in Lagos, Nigeria. His father, an accomplished businessman, had placed the weight of the family's legacy squarely on his shoulders. Tunda had always known that his role in the family was important. He was to carry on the family name, provide for future generations, and uphold the proud traditions of their people. But in many ways, Tundi had always felt like an outsider in his own life. He wasn't like his father, who had an air of authority and command, a man whose mere presence in a room demanded respect. Tunda had been quieter, introspective, and at times unsure of his place. Yet he had always found comfort in his deep love for Amara, his wife, and in the certainty that he would one day father children of his own. It had always been a part of the plan, one that seemed as natural as breathing. Amara was different. She had grown up in a household where education and independence were prized above all else. Her father, a professor of literature, had always encouraged her to think freely and pursue her own path in life. Amara had studied in the United States, earning a degree in social work, and had returned to Nigeria with a passion for helping others. Her kind heart and unwavering belief in the good that people could do in the world had always set her apart from others. But it was her strong sense of empathy and ability to understand people that drew Tunda to her. Their love story was one of shared values and quiet companionship. While their families had expected them to fit into certain molds, Tunde as the powerful patriarch and Amara as the supportive wife, they had always found their own rhythm together. Their relationship was built on mutual respect, understanding, and the simple joy of being in each other's presence. They were partners in every sense of the word. Tuni had proposed to Amara on a warm evening in Lagos, under the twinkling stars. His words had been simple, yet sincere. "I want to build a life with you, Amara. I want to grow old with you." It was the first time he had allowed himself to fully open up to her, to let her see the vulnerabilities he kept hidden from the world. Amara had accepted, her love for him evident in the way she smiled, the way she reached for his hand. Their wedding had been a beautiful celebration of two families coming together, but it was also a union that symbolized a merging of worlds. Tunde's family was rooted in tradition, proud of its history, while Amara's family was more progressive, encouraging her to chart her own course in life. But they both wanted the same thing, to see Tunde and Amara thrive together. They built a life together that reflected both their values and the love they had for one another. It wasn't a perfect life, but it was theirs. They worked hard, supported each other's careers, and dreamed of the family they would one day raise. But as time passed, Tunde began to feel the pull of his father's expectations more keenly. There were whispers in the family about when Amara would become pregnant, about when they would have children to carry on the family name. For Tunde, the pressure mounted. His father's voice seemed to echo in his head, reminding him that as the firstborn son, he had a responsibility to produce heirs. The idea of fatherhood had always been something Tunda looked forward to. It was supposed to be the natural progression of his life. But with each passing year, their attempts to conceive had been met with disappointment. Amara, ever patient and understanding, reassured Tunde that they would be okay no matter what. She wasn't concerned about biological children. She simply wanted to build a life with him, to create a family. But Tunde was haunted by the feeling that something fundamental was missing. He had failed to live up to expectations, and worse yet, he felt like he had failed Amara, the woman he loved deeply. The empty room felt colder than it should have, the sterile walls echoing back Tunde's own voice as he said the words aloud. "I'm sterile." He repeated the words, trying to make them real, trying to make them fit into the story he had written for himself. But no matter how many times he said it, it didn't make sense. Tunda had always pictured himself as a father, playing with his children, watching them grow, passing on his name. But this news, this diagnosis, shattered everything. The doctor's words had been clinical, distant. Male infertility, a common issue though not often discussed. Tundi had heard the words, but he hadn't really listened. It was as though the world around him had frozen. He sat there in silence, his heart beating faster as he tried to breathe through shock. Amara's voice, soft and steady, broke the silence. "We'll find a way, Tunda." Her presence beside him was a comfort, but the weight of the situation hung heavy between them. He had never imagined this moment. He'd imagined many things: meeting Amara's parents for the first time, their wedding day, their life together. But not this. Not this feeling of being less than a man, less than a husband, less than a father. But Amara was unwavering, her love for him as constant as ever. She didn't see this as a failure. She didn't see Tunde as any less than he had been before. But that was the crux of it, wasn't it? Tunde had always measured his worth through his ability to father children. In the world he had grown up in, being a man meant creating a family, building a legacy that could be passed down. And now that legacy was slipping through his fingers. As the days went by, Tunde couldn't shake the nagging feeling that he was letting Amara down. He had failed to live up to the expectations, his father's expectations, the community's expectations, his own. It wasn't just about being able to have children. It was about being the man he thought he was supposed to be. His identity as a man was built on a foundation of strength, of carrying on the family name, and now that foundation had cracked. Amara, however, was not moved by his internal turmoil. She had always known there was more than one way to build a family. And while Tunde's anguish was palpable, Amara held her ground, gently suggesting adoption. It wasn't the solution to everything, but it was a solution to the emptiness they both felt. She wanted to bring children into their home, children who needed love, security, and a future. But Tunde's hesitation was profound. Adoption is not something I ever thought I'd consider, he admitted. I always imagined having children of my own. You will have children of your own, Amara said, her voice resolute. They just won't be biologically ours. They'll be our children, ours in every way that matters. The words took time to sink in, and though Tunde nodded, he wasn't sure he believed them yet. He needed time. Months passed, and Tunde reluctantly agreed to visit an adoption agency with Amara. They toured orphanages, met social workers, and slowly came to realize the truth. There were children who needed parents, children who had been left behind by the system, by the world. And there, among those children, were 4 siblings who had been through hell: Ngozi, Chika, Obi, and Zara. Each one was a story of loss, of struggle, but also of hope. And as Tunde saw the look in their eyes, something inside him shifted. These children weren't strangers to him. They were already a part of him, in ways he couldn't yet understand. But even as his heart warmed to them, his mind was filled with doubt. Would they truly accept him as their father? Could he really love them as his own? Could he be the father they needed? Tunde found himself torn. His mind was a battlefield, torn between his cultural understanding of what fatherhood should be and the new reality he was being forced to confront. His pride and fear kept him at a distance, even as his heart began to break for these children. It was Amara who made the final push. We've been given a chance, she said. Let's take it. We can give them a family. And so, after months of navigating the bureaucracy of the adoption process, the children officially became theirs. It was a moment of profound change, but also one of fear. What would their families think? What would their friends say? When Tunde first told his parents, he wasn't sure what to expect. Mama Tunde, a woman of deep tradition, had always talked about family in a way that made Tunde feel as though his entire worth rested on continuing the family line. She had raised him to believe that being a man meant having children, especially sons, to carry on the family name. But now, sitting across from her in the living room with Amara by his side, Tunde was nervous. 4 children, Tunde. Mama Tunde's voice was hard. And none of them your own? Tunde could feel the sting of judgment in his mother's words. He had expected this, but it still hurt. The silence between them was deafening, and Tunde couldn't find the right words. Amara spoke up, her voice gentle but firm. They are our children, Mama. We will love them as our own. Mama Tunde looked at her son, searching for the boy she had raised, the one who was supposed to carry on the family name. Tunde felt his heart constrict in his chest. What about your legacy? His mother asked. Tunde swallowed hard. It's not about blood, Mama. It's about love. There was a long pause, a battle playing out silently between them. Finally, Mama Tunde sighed. You have always been my son. I will not turn my back on you. But it is difficult to understand. It wasn't a blessing, but it wasn't a rejection either. It was a step forward, a small crack in the wall that had separated them for so long. As the weeks turned into months, Tunda's heart grew fuller. The house that had once felt empty was now alive with laughter, chaos, and love. But there were moments, often late at night, when the weight of what they had chosen hit him again. He would lie in bed beside Amara, listening to the soft sounds of their children's breathing, and wonder if he was enough. But in the morning, when Zara would run into their room with a bright smile, or when Obi would sit quietly beside him and ask for advice on building a new project, Tunde knew that he was. These children were his, in every way that mattered. But the world outside their home was not as kind. At church, the whispers started. People talked behind their backs, questioning the legitimacy of Tunda's fatherhood. At school, the children were teased. Obi, the quietest of them all, became the target of bullies. The weight of being different started to affect them all, and Tunde found himself caught between the desire to protect them and the knowledge that sometimes the world would never see them as his. One evening, after Obi came home with a bruise on his arm, Tunde's anger flared. He wanted to march to the school, confront the bullies, and make them understand that these children were his. But when Obi spoke, Tunde's rage turned into pride. "I told them my daddy loves me more than anyone else," Obi said quietly, wiping away a tear. His eyes were full of quiet defiance, but it was his words that truly struck Tunde. Tunde knelt down beside Obi, placing his hand gently on his shoulder. "And what else did you tell them, son?" he asked, his voice soft but firm. Obi looked up at him, his face lighting up. "I told them I'm proud to be your son. I don't need to look like you to know that you're my dad." Tunde's heart swelled with emotion. For a moment, he was speechless. He thought of all the doubts he had harbored for so long about being enough. But in that moment, Obi had given him the clarity he had been seeking for so long. Being a father wasn't about bloodlines. It was about the love, the protection, the sacrifice. And that was something Tunde gave freely every day. As the years passed, Tunde, Amara, and their children became a living testament to the fact that family is not defined by blood, but by love, sacrifice, and choice. Tunde's initial fears and doubts melted away as he saw the remarkable individuals his children were becoming. Ngozi, the oldest, excelled academically and was fiercely protective of her younger siblings. Chika, the artist, painted vibrant murals that told the stories of their family's journey. Zara, the youngest, had a heart full of empathy and passion for helping others. And Obi, the quiet strength, grew into a young man with a steady resolve and a deep sense of justice. Tunde had learned a hard but invaluable lesson. Love was the thread that held them together, not blood. In his children's eyes, he was their father, their protector, their guide. It didn't matter that he had not been able to give them the gift of life in the traditional sense. What mattered was that he gave them everything else, a home filled with warmth, support, and unwavering love. Even Tunde's parents began to soften as they watched the children thrive, seeing firsthand that family was far more than genetic ties. His father, though still quiet about the matter, began to take a more active role in his grandchildren's lives, sharing stories of their ancestors and introducing them to the richness of their heritage. Mama Tunde, ever the traditionalist, came to a quiet realization. She watched her grandchildren, her legacy in their own right, embrace the traditions of their people while also carving their own paths. And in her heart, she saw that the family name had not been lost. It had been strengthened in ways she had not anticipated. The day finally came when Tunde's family, the one he had fought so hard to build, was recognized in ways he had never thought possible. Their story, a story of resilience, love, and overcoming societal expectations, spread through their community, inspiring others who felt trapped by traditional ideals of family and masculinity. Tunde's willingness to step outside the confines of tradition, to embrace his vulnerability, and to open his heart to children who needed love became a source of pride. Amara stood beside him every step of the way, her strength unwavering. Together, they had created a family that was unique, one built on love rather than obligation. They had succeeded not in spite of their differences, but because of them. The bond they shared with their children was a testament to the power of choice, of love, and of resilience. In the end, Tunde's story isn't one about failure or disappointment, but about growth, vulnerability, and the courage to redefine what it means to be a man, a husband, and a father. It's a story of breaking free from cultural expectations and learning to accept that true masculinity doesn't lie in fulfilling rigid traditions, but in embracing love, tenderness, and the willingness to be vulnerable. Through the challenges of infertility, societal judgment, and personal doubts, Tunde and Amara forged a family that defied convention. They showed that parenthood isn't just about biology, it's about creating a safe, loving environment for children to grow, thrive, and discover who they are. In a world that often emphasizes rigid definitions of masculinity and family, Tunde's journey reminds us that it's love and commitment, not blood, that makes a family. Through adoption, vulnerability, and unwavering support for each other, Tunde and Amara taught their children that family is not bound by bloodlines, but by the strength of the love and care that binds them together. True success, they realize, lies not in conforming to what others expect of you, but in embracing your own path, your own journey, and the people you choose to love along the way.